Hello and welcome to the United Nations Ocean Decade Laboratory, A Clean Ocean. I'm Bruna Ray, a fashion environmentalist and your host for the satellite session. Fashion, as we know, is a $3 trillion industry which makes a sizable contribution when it comes to climate change. Fashion has also contributed largely to human-made global warming through fast fashion, the plastic industry, and the dyeing industry, to name a few. The ocean has long been our ally when it comes to addressing climate change. And it is time we reciprocate. So join me as we welcome designers from Africa who are paving their way forward in the realm of sustainability in their practices. Also stay tuned to see how debris could be converted into products for the fashion industry by using the reduce, reuse, and recycle technique. So stay tuned for a lot more nature-based solutions and enjoy the session, as I'm sure we're all going to be doing that here right now. Thank you. So join me in welcoming Damaris Mungai, who works for the UN Environment Programme in Africa. And amongst other global issues that she has tackled, she's also very involved with the youth and gender issues. Welcome, Damaris, to the UN Ocean Decade and for the Clean Ocean Laboratory. So could you please tell a bit about yourself and how did you get to enter the realm of environmental sustainability?
Thanks very much, Runa, and thanks for the opportunity to be part of this particular discussion. It's interesting because I would say I started my life as an environmentalist a long time ago. When I was a young person, I was in what was called the Wildlife Clubs of Kenya. My country of origin is Kenya. And so we did have Wildlife Clubs of Kenya, and I was part of them. And I think what engaged me with the Wildlife Clubs of Kenya is the outgoing, you could say the outdoors. I love the outdoors. I love going to see animals. And interestingly, over time, and I don't even know how to explain this, but my mother used to work for the International Union for Conservation of Nature. And so instead of watching all the things that supposedly people watch, I would watch documentaries, and I will remember most of the documentaries were about rivers and lakes and ecosystems around oceans. And it was always so beautiful looking at nature. So I think based on what I saw, I got the zeal to be part of this bigger thing. And so I studied the same at university. So I went and studied environmental science and then focused on water resources management as well as communication science. So that's how. So I would say all my life, I have been in the area of environmental sustainability up to now.
But it's also that you're working a lot with youth and gender issues right now at UNEP, correct? So can you tell us a bit about that? Because I find that very interesting and it is a very important topic right now. We need the youth and we also need women empowerment. So could you please elaborate a bit on that?
Thanks, Runa. And that's a good point to note. At the United Nations in the Africa office, I'm leading the gender and youth portfolio. And it's a very interesting docket, and the reason why it's an important space, it's because one of the things that we want to focus on when it comes to environment sustainability is impacting lives. When you speak about environmental management, when you talk about environmental sustainability, it doesn't make sense if you're not impacting lives, if you're not touching people's lives. And who are these people you're touching? You're touching the young population, you're touching the women who are constantly engaged with nature and constantly not having a voice regarding the same. Whereas not just having voices, at the same time not being involved in decision making. Definitely the youth too. And so I find it very interesting when I'm working in this docket, because you find that I tend to engage with all sorts of people. So I find scientists who are both men, women, and also young people. I find people who are activists who are men, women, and the youth. And then you find people totally not aware about the great role they play in the same area. So being able to bring in that nexus the continuity of the same and bringing the synergy and just showing the possibilities that exist when this constituency of people is highly engaged in the environmental sustainability is what pushes me to continue doing what I do. So it's more the synergy between the impacts that you want to create on the continent, but at the same time, the role they are currently playing and the role they can actually play in the future.
That's awesome. How do you actually plan to get the youth mostly involved in the realm of sustainability? Because that's the only way forward right now. And that's one of the reasons we're doing all these, having all these discussions, because we have a lot of youth watching. So how do you plan to get a lot more of them involved in sustainability?
It's amazing. One of the things that's happening right now, and I think you might have observed, you might have noticed, is that we are having a lot of call for applications, call for challenges, call for innovations. We're having a lot of those. And the reason is because, again, we want to bring in the innovative and the dynamic nature of the youth into this picture.
Mm-hmm.
And the only way also to bring out this is to call them out. So that's one of the strategies, to work closely with different entities, to call in different requests. So for example, right now we are speaking about the decade. How many scientists are out there doing amazing things who are youthful? How many have done marine science? How many have done water resources management? How many are dealing with the whole ocean science? There are so many. But at the same time, whereas they are maybe involved in academia, how are we able to engage them with the interface of science, policy, and action? So that's how calling them out, just calling them out is one of the strategies that we are going to be using.
Absolutely, because I think even with decades like this, you do have a lot of scientists, but when you have the youth involved and you have creativity that comes into the picture, then you can actually penetrate a larger mass of people, correct?
True.
And that reminds me of you had this huge social campaign, the Anatomy of Action, Made in Africa Challenge. And I was so grateful to be a part of it. And what was really exciting was that we had a lot of people who were working with the 3 R's that you had made very important: the reduce, reuse, and recycle. We got to see a lot of innovative works that came in. But I just want to ask you, because of the people also listening right now, which creation or which aspect of the 3 R's of the reduce, reuse, recycle that you saw, you think could be relevant to the ocean decade? Was there anything that stood out?
Much. Yeah, so maybe just to bring to the, to just bring everyone on board to what you're speaking about. So we do have what is called the Anatomy of Action, which is an action, we are calling it, we could call it a challenge that we run within the United Nations Environment Programme. And this particular challenge is about engaging youth, women, and everyone around the continent and the world to sustainable lifestyles. So we have various domains, and what you're speaking about, particularly at that point, we decided to focus on 3 domains, which was one regarding staff, and for Africa, we focused on sustainable fashion. And then there was the other one on disposing plastics, and the other one was about upcycling. Yeah. And the 3 of them came out very, I would say they were all at par, vast. And the reason is because we are finding that the consumerism in the continent is going high. And so it's coming in the area of garments, quick fashion, secondhand fashion. So we are finding a lot of that. And at the same time, we are finding a lot of plastic bottle use and a lot of plastic use in the continent, which again is not, you could say, managed well. And at the same time, we are seeing that whereas this is happening, we are finding many youth and women engaging in the area of circular economy to upcycle some of these things. So it was very interesting to see the innovations coming from the continent on these two aspects, particularly how to take plastic to the next level. You might have seen a young lady who actually was a champion when we had a challenge in UNEP, and she's actually doing a cabro with plastic. So it's just those kind of innovations that take us to the next level, and you're like, yes, we are doing the right thing. And then when it comes to fashion, the relationship between fashion and the emissions and pollution that comes with fashion, with our waters, our rivers, our lakes, and ultimately our oceans, definitely that came out so clear. And so that relationship we can see totally coming in with the ocean decade. And we could actually say that particular challenge, whereas it wasn't at that point focusing on the ocean, the relationship and the correlation is high, very high.
Yeah, very true. I completely agree. And it's also with the plastics. Right now, we really need to find a solution. And I saw some great innovations that happened. So great. What happens if the people watching here, would you be having a lot more of these innovations coming up in the future that the public could be a part of?
Yes, actually, interesting you speak about it. We just finished now a global one. The one you engaged with was the continental one that was focused on Africa. And we just finished a global one, which ran from 28th of September to the 14th of October. And that handled 15 domains.
Wow.
And it was very interesting to see. We actually hit right now I can't remember the past. I actually think I just need to remember, but it was quite a big reach. It was quite a big reach on social media. Yes.
That's awesome. So good. So we're going to keep an eye on you and stay in touch to see what other global campaigns we can be a part of and how innovations can, drive the future of the planet. That brings me to something very interesting that I read about you. Now, you say that you've also had background when it comes to water management and wetland and marine resource management.
Yeah.
Could you tell me a bit about that? Because it's so interesting, because right now is the ocean decade, you're into sustainability, you've got like these challenges happening for the youth and gender. So could you just elaborate a bit about your background with the waterworks?
Thanks so much, Runa. It's amazing you speak about that. I don't even know how to put it, but when we speak about water and when we speak about water resources, it is one of those things that you cannot discuss in isolation, because water is life and every drop counts. We already know that 97% of our world is made up of oceans. And so it is so important to recognize the role that oceans play. And I think they have been an ecosystem that we have overexploited for so long and consequently overpolluted. And recognizing so, then you come to a point where you ask yourself what went wrong where, and why is it that this particular important ecosystem, because every time you want to go on holiday, you think of the ocean. When you think of the greatest, the greatest, we could say, underground biodiversity, it is in the ocean. And so when we see scientists speak about rising levels, when we see about temperature rise, and we imagine that all this is human induced, then we can definitely not overlook the need to be and the need to take this ocean decade to the next level. For me, the reason why I studied water is because I realized that it is the one ecosystem that no one can do without. But what we are continuously doing, and I think it is because it's not able to speak for itself. And so the interlinkages then between the lakes and the rivers and the catchments all the way to the ocean, you may not notice the effect, but you create an effect in Kenya and the effect is felt somewhere else. And so it's one of those ecosystems that's interesting. It's very dynamic. And it's one of those things that I would say right now everyone has to have a focus on it.
Absolutely.
Without water, our human ecosystem does not exist.
Absolutely. Everything is connected. And that's one of the reasons, even with fashion, because there's so many processes. As a fashion designer, I see that everything we do is connected with water, any process, textile, garmenting. So that's true. But there's also another thing now that you also work with youth and gender issues. We've also been finding a lot of problems when it comes to women from coastal communities, from LDCs and developing countries, also facing environmental racism. And at the same time, we've been trying to do our best to see how we could help them. But when, like, I'm speaking to you, somebody from UNEP and who's working on these issues, and for the future, how do you plan to get the youth not just involved in sustainability, but also understanding that they need to be responsible and how they could probably directly impact the lives of these women?
And thank you very much for that question. The one thing we also know, Runa, is that women interact with these ecosystems every day. They are the ones who interact with these ecosystems every day. And knowledge about marine or coastal or ocean resources is passed most of the time from maternal, from the matriarchal system. And so when we say how then can the youth support women in their vast, in their quest for ocean conservation or ocean protection, one of the things is to ask them about their knowledge. They have a lot of knowledge. So I would say the youth are young, they are youthful. They have found the ocean. Definitely a lot of things maybe haven't gone right. But what was done right before, what is currently being done right, and what do the women think can be done right? So what I'm speaking about is utilization of local knowledge. And if these people are indigenous knowledge. So if the youth can be able to tap onto that so that it's not lost. There's a reason why we still have coral reefs. There's a reason why we still have mangroves. There's a reason why we still have things still happening. Because someone somewhere knew how to manage these resources right. And half of the time, it's our women, because we really are nurturers, and that is our kind of character trait. So how is it that then the youth can tap into that intergenerational dialogue so that they are not coming into we know everything? So that intergenerational dialogue with the science that they have, connecting the two will be the masterpiece. Connecting indigenous knowledge systems, local knowledge, having intergenerational dialogue, and then the youth themselves who've gone to school and studied biology and marine science and all that, connecting it and coming up with amazing innovations on how to keep our planet better.
I learned a lot from you, and I think it's so important. It resonates so well that the youth are studying and to mix it with the indigenous knowledge to take it for the future. That I know we're running out of time, but I would like to ask you my last question, and that would be for the youth and everyone who's listening here. How can they be a part of the Ocean Decade, and how do you think they could probably contribute to it?
Thank you.
You've already answered it, but I'm going to ask you again.
So this is the thing. We don't want to leave anyone behind. So an enabling environment is being created. One of them is the decade itself. So how can then the youth learn the ocean, protect the ocean, and live with the ocean? How can they? Already there's an enabling environment. It is known that it is important that the ocean is protected. And since we do not want to leave them behind, can they ask? Can they continue to ask? The table is already set. They just need to sit on the table. Can they ask how to sit on the table? and be the ones dishing the dish. Because ultimately, they have to do it for their generation, because they right now, we cannot continue to say they are the future leaders. They are the leaders right now. They have everything. They are dynamic, they are innovative, they are very creative, they are intellectual, they are academics. So they are living in the present. But can they think of the future? And the table has been set for them. They just need to sit on it and serve the dish.
And thank you so much, Damaris. It was such a wonderful conversation with you. Thank you for joining us. And please stay tuned, because we're going to be meeting the wonderful African designers who are making a huge difference and impacting the ocean decade. So please stay tuned.
Can't wait. Thank you so much, Runa. Thanks for having me.
Of course. I have Nitenia Miranda, who is a very inspiring entrepreneur who has joined us all the way from Nairobi. And she's the founder of the label Saba. She studied in Malaysia and Kuala Lumpur and returned to Nairobi 5 years ago and fell in love with fish leather. So, and then she started a line of bags. So she basically uses fish leather combined with Masai Mara techniques of beading. So welcome, Nitenia, to the UN Ocean Decade for Sustainable Science. And could you please elaborate what fish leather is and what the processes are compared to like animal leather, tanning, and the other processes?
Okay, thank you for having me. I chose to go with fish leather because it is the second strongest leather in the world, with the same thickness as animal leather. And mainly they use Nile perch or tilapia, which are not endangered species. So a really great alternative to crocodile and snake skin. The processes of making the fish leather are, so basically they go fishing in a place called Turkana, and this is the northwestern part of Kenya. It is a desert lake. And they mainly use Nile perch because Nile perch produces larger pieces of skin or leather. And the process is, it's a byproduct of the fish industry. So once they've done the fishing and once they've gotten their meat, the skins are then frozen and then taken to a secondary factory that is 400 kilometers away in Kitale town. It is then received by the women there who inspect it to ensure that it will be of quality product at the end of the production line. So tanning of fish skin takes anywhere up from a week if they're using chrome tanning methods, or up to 2 months if they're using vegetable tanning methods. For vegetable tanning, they use various barks of trees. And for the chrome tanning process, they use a particular facility that is excellent in doing this, simply because disposing of chrome, chrome is hazardous to the environment and to our oceans. So the Kenyan government has taken great care in setting up 2 particular plants in Nairobi and Kisumu that dispose of this amicably.
So when it comes to like the animal leathers and the fish leather, you say that fish leather is definitely more environmentally friendly.
Yes.
And is there any, and with your work with the factories, was there anything in particular that stood out that made you realize that, yes, this is the way to go and we need to start looking into it? Because as designers, everyone's kind of moving into leathers that are made out of fruit skin and, like Pinatex and pineapple and stuff like that. So, and fish leather has been around. It's been around for like centuries, but now it's kind of getting in the forefront of fashion, and fashion really needs to step up when it comes to the environment. So what was that one particular thing that you did see in the factories that you were like, this is the way forward for fish leather rather than having animal skin? Is there anything that you saw in particular?
I like the fact that it being a byproduct of the fish industry, nothing was being wasted. Usually they would discard the skin before they discovered this. And on top of that, the bones are then made into animal feed as protein. So really nothing is being wasted. And with the fish leather, at the end of the process, it's so beautiful. Depending on how they finish it, they can add foil, they can, they can dye it in various colors. If they decide to gloss it over, then it does look a little bit more snake skin, more crocodile. If they don't, then it's got this velvety, beautiful touch. Can I show you while I'm talking? So you see, the texture is so beautiful. So you can actually lift the scales depending on how they finish it. So I really just liked I really just liked the fact that there was no wastage. I also really liked the fact that the majority of the staff that were working in the factories were women. And I also just liked the finishing. Playing with textures is something I've always enjoyed doing. So I felt like it added to the brand.
And the fact that you also said that you have women who are of majority working, so that's good because it directly impacts SDG 5, which is women equality, which is very important right now. And you being a woman entrepreneur, you get to see a lot of women in the industry. So that's awesome.
Exactly.
So that's good. So definitely fish leather, I think, is one of the ways to go ahead with, because you don't have large tracts of land which are going to be left where you have animals being farmed, and of course that causes another environmental issue. And here you're consuming the entire animal, and you're actually making use of the byproduct. And I also like the fact that they're using a lot of vegetable dyes when it comes to actually processing of the leather, which I don't think can be used too much when it comes to like animal skin. So that's great. That is great. I would also like to tell the audience that you've been working with a very special video. So please stay tuned. We're going to be sharing a video that Nitenia has specially prepared for us with her work at the fish leather factories in Nairobi. Thank you, Nitenia. That was a fantastic video, enriching and enlightening. So, and I'm sure the audience would have loved seeing the entire process, which is so unique. I have another question for you. How do you think present day designers could engage when it comes to upholding the oceans in their design processes? And what do you think could be your advice to them?
I definitely believe that preserving and taking care of our planet and our oceans is our #1 priority, plain and simple. And as designers, it is our responsibility to do our due diligence in terms of working with supply chains that are upholding the standards required. I feel like it's very important for us to be very transparent about who we're working with and ensuring that the people we are working with are doing what they're saying they're doing. My advice would definitely be transparency in who you do business with and how you do business, because as a designer, every decision you make is going to impact our oceans or our people. So why not let it be a positive one?
Could you elaborate the kind of products that you've actually made, and I did read that you also work with the Masai Mara beading technique. And so that's pretty interesting. Could you kind of tell us a bit about that?
Okay, I decided to create a luxury leather bag brand that was sustainable because it was very important for me to protect both our planet, our oceans, and our people. Being from the Maasai tribe myself, my mom's Maasai, I grew up around beading techniques every day of my life. And I noticed that as we got more commercial, the motifs and the stories behind the beading started to disappear. Whereas before, in my grandmother's times, beadings would tell you which clans people are from, not just what area, to their clan. So for instance, the all white beading is very representative of the Maasais from Tanzania. Whereas the yellow and the red beading is very well known for the West Pokot tribe. And for me, I just wanted to tell these stories. I have the privilege to do so, to be able to tell these stories in my designs and show you the journey that the communities have been through and gone through. So I love being able to just sit among the women, listen to their stories, because we learn so much, as we get more, it's sad to say, as we get more educated, sometimes we start to lose our heritage if we're not careful. And one thing that I love doing is I love speaking on Maasai. I love showing a wholesome and the vibrant side of the Maasai culture. It's so full of, the women are just so full of energy. It's something they do all the time. And for us, we really regard beadwork like the way people regard diamonds. For instance, my mother's wedding necklace, I can't touch that at all. Like, it's just for display.
Wow.
That's it. So we really take pride in our tribe and what we produce. And it helps me to interact with the women on a daily basis. It helps me to also be able to educate them. For instance, I like to bring in health facilitators to talk about things that they're normally very shy to broach, prenatal care, postnatal care. Some women are still giving birth at home, and so for me, it's really important for them to be healthy and for their children to be healthy. I also try to bring in financial literacy, basic financial literacy for them, people who can speak on it, because we use a mobile money. So everybody uses it now. So I try to teach them on how to save. I try to encourage them to start their own businesses, not to feel they're beholden to stay with me. I want to see them grow. I believe that if you change the life of one woman, you change a generation, because you're going to change her way of thinking, the way she raises her kids, how she handles her money, how she leverages on opportunities. Because now, more than ever, we have so many Westerners who come to visit and really love the Maasai culture and the beadwork. So how can they leverage more on that and be paid fairly? I really push for the ladies in my beading circle to be paid fairly. I'd rather not make a lot of profit and ensure that they're getting more. That's really, really important for me. Yeah.
Yeah, so insightful. And that's so lovely. I never knew that the beading actually denotes different tribes. That is fascinating. Mm-hmm. And it's almost like I really want to see your mother's wedding necklace. I know you can't touch it, but
can I bring it secretly? No, I can bring it off the wall.
Oh, it's on the wall? Oh my gosh.
I can take the laptop for you to see it.
Oh, shucks.
It's just between us.
Okay.
Can you see it?
Oh my gosh, that is amazing.
Yeah, and hers was made both in Tanzania and in Kenya, because our
my gosh, this is fascinating.
Yeah, it's on the border of Tanzania and Kenya. We're right on the border. So hers was extra special.
That is amazing. And you actually using this in your fish leather handbags. Oh my gosh.
I actually work with an association that was started in this spirit to protect our stories, our motifs, our beading styles. So they're called Ushanga Association.
Okay.
And it's so interesting. When I went to initially have a meeting with them, they were like, okay, can you send us your designs? You know, what would you like us to be? And I said, no, I want to follow, each clan's design. That's actually what I want to incorporate in the brand as part of my brand story. I want that when I'm no longer here and you still have one of my bags, you'll know that this represented this tribe or this clan and this story. Yeah.
I think the audience really loved watching your mother's wedding necklace, which you couldn't touch, but you could show, which is fine. So thank you so much, Nithanya, for joining us. And we got to learn a lot. People get to know what Africa is doing in the forefront of fashion, and how young women entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs in general in the fashion industry are taking it upon themselves to make sure that SDG 13, which is climate action, is being directly impacted through their actions. I wish you all the best. And
thank you.
Look forward to a lot more fish leather products from you, and you impacting a lot more younger generation fashion designers. Thank you so much.
Looking forward. Thank you so much for having me.
We are joined by Larry Abushari, who's the founder of the Sustainable Fashion Economy, SAFE, where he's the creative director and designer, advocating for sustainable lifestyle in fashion through upcycling and recycling of textiles. Larry, welcome to the UN Ocean Decade. I would like to start off by asking you, how did you choose to work with denim? And how does it actually help in conserving the oceans?
Thank you, Runare. I've been a designer ever since I was a child. And growing up, I loved denim so much. And up to now, I've realized, number one, denim will never run out of fashion. It has always been there ever since I was a kid. And with the increase of population has led to the increase of the demand of production of denim. And this, with that, it has led to an increase also of water pollution into our rivers. And here in Kenya, there's nearly 12 manufacturing factories that manufacture denim. And the sad thing is they drain their wastewater directly to Athi River. And this Athi River goes all the way to become Tana River, and which also ends draining its waters into the ocean. And the people around the Athi River have been complaining a lot of water pollutions and everything. The water is just a menace. So that's what triggered me to start recycling and using denim.
So what do you normally do with your recycling process in terms of when you say recycling your denim, how does that actually help with the waters in Kenya and help in taking care of the pollution? Because we know that denim is highly water intensive, apart from a plant being water intensive, but the processes also are highly disrupting when it comes to the waters and then that entering the seas and damaging the ecosystem. So what is it that you are doing as an entrepreneur and as a designer in your processes that are actually helping contribute to the safeguarding of the Kenyan waters?
So number one, I make dresses, the jackets and the hats using denim. How do I do that? I always go to the garment factories, pick the industrial waste cut-offs that have remained in the industries, and also go to my customer's house, pick their waste jeans, because I always advise them not to throw away. By doing this, I end up reducing mass production of denim by 5 pieces, 10 pieces, and 20 pieces. So at the end of the day, I limit the mass production by a certain number. I may be doing it alone, but at the end of the day, I'm doing something by encouraging my customers to minimize buying new denim.
So you're basically taking the denim that could be actually left behind by the factories. It could be like the end bits, or it could be like the cut pieces, which you're kind of assembling together to make a completely new garment. That is a great thing. That is really good. So that prevents the fabrics from ending up in the landfill. And at the same time, you're also helping conserve water, because each part that is actually wasted also has a lot of process that has gone into it. So rather than wasting that, you're actually upcycling it, upcycling the end bits into making a garment.
Yeah.
I also read, Larry, that you did some work with UNEA, and this was in 2018. Am I right?
Yes, Runare.
So I think that was pretty interesting. Could you tell me a bit about that, and what was your role with sustainable fashion?
Yeah, so the UNEA approached us. So I partnered with a friend called Henry Wanjala, and we created 12 pieces to create awareness on sustainable fashion here in Kenya, because the population, people in Kenya haven't really picked sustainable fashion. They think it's a bit low standard, so buying new it's a bit cool buying new. But you're trying to show the young generation you can still recycle and upcycle and still look cool. You don't need to buy new. So that was the main agenda, just showing to the young guys that you can recycle, upcycle, and still look dope.
That's awesome. I love it. And still look dope. That's so true, right? Absolutely. Yeah. So what kind of pieces did you actually make?
There were dresses, jackets, made from, we recycled curtains. Nice. And some kitenge cut-offs, so that we can show. It was also kind of showing the audience, once you're done with your curtains, once you're done with your table runners, you don't need to throw them away. We can make something like even cushion covers, some covers for your throws, some table mats. There's a lot to be done instead of throwing away.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's so true. It's all like, this is what we speak about, the reduce, reuse, and recycle, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And this is again, you know, what's really interesting is because all this is connected to the oceans. People don't realize that, but every process that any garment has undergone has water in it. So anything that you could actually save and give a second life to, you're actually protecting the oceans. Correct?
Yeah, and actually in 2019 during lockdown, people, I came to realize people had a lot of clothes stashed into their closet. And like last year, I did a lot of recycling. I was walking through my customers' home, because I realized they can't buy new, and also I need to survive in the industry. So I used to go and tell them into their wardrobes, just like, what can you do? Can I recycle your wardrobe for you? I can make you a hoodie. I can make you a jacket at a subsidized price, probably half or 80%. And they were like, oh, that's cool, because at the end of the day, I'll reduce the price for you. And at the end of the day, you'll be saving the environment. So I was like giving them a nickname. They were like sustainable heroes, like super moms and super dads.
That's awesome.
And they were really excited, like, oh, I'm a sustainable super dad. I'm a sustainable super mom. So it was really fun.
That is really cool. And that's something which even their children will learn. And then you're impacting their wardrobes. And at the same time, you're making sure that they're not investing in buying new clothes, but using what they have and getting something new with it.
Yeah.
That's great. That's really great, Larry. Larry, you also said that you had a wonderful video that you would like to share with the audience, which speaks of the process, so we can actually understand what you're doing. So everyone, please take a look at what Larry has to share with us.
So all these are waste denim cutoffs from the garment factories, collected and displayed here for sale. If not used, they will all end up in landfills. So I always select the pieces that I need, then go pay to the owner of the display, who I always make sure it's a woman. In the studio, I draft the waist cutoffs together with my customers' old jeans and stitch them together into different products. When I recycle, I minimize my customers' desires to buy new jeans, thus reducing the productions of jeans in factories by 100 pieces, 500 pieces, and even up to 1,000 pieces.
And if okay, if we have 2-3 people or even 100 people like me doing the same with the denim, you can imagine the number of production, of mass production, the number of denim will be reducing. I may be impacting probably by reducing 50 pieces, 20 pieces, but you see, if you are 100, we can be like doing like 5,000 pieces. So at the end of the day, if a garment factories manufacture like 10,000 pieces a year, they may end up reducing their production to probably 5,000 to 3,000 due to less demand, since we'll be encouraging our customers to buy less.
That's true. And at the end of the day, they're buying something very unique, which is upcycled and customized and homegrown almost. And at the same time, also helping the corporates and the consumers at large. Larry, I have one last question for you.
Okay.
How do you think present day designers could engage in upholding the oceans in the design processes? And what's your advice to them?
Number one, I would like the designers to know, like, we only have one world, and we should, all of us, we should learn to train our minds to think ethically and create ethical and sustainable products. By number one, we can use less or none of plastic accessories in our garments. Number two, we make sure we are using natural dyes instead of synthetic dyes. That way, the oceans will be safe. And then lastly, we can use less or non-polyester or man-made fabric. That way also, our oceans will be safe.
And it's very true. I completely agree with you that we need to restrict our consumption when it comes to synthetics, because that gives rise to microfibers. And we all know how microfibers actually affect the oceans, because it affects the fish and the delicate ecosystem. The second thing is, of course, natural dyes, because synthetic dyes have a lot of carcinogenic materials in it, which are very dangerous, again, to the ecosystem and to man. And what was the other point that you made?
Minimum or no use of plastic accessories like buttons, zippers. Yeah, we should try to avoid a lot of plastic accessories into our garments.
Absolutely. I have another very important question, Larry, when it comes to SDG 5, which is equality. We know that all around in the industry that women are generally facing a lot of prejudice when it comes to equality in pay and inequality to certain standards. Yeah, and this is nothing that is unknown, especially in the fashion industry. But I'd like to know, how is it that you, as an entrepreneur and from the opposite sex, how are you actually ensuring that this is done right and that women's needs are also met?
Yeah, number one, I participate in charity work with the UNODC, United Nations on Drugs and Crime. Currently, there's a project that it's beginning in November and December. I'm training girls in conflict with the law in Kirigiti and Dagoretti on sustainable fashion. And I'm impacting the use of denim in them, so that once they are integrated back in the society, I can keep up the momentum to still continue working with them. Apart from that, I make sure like a quarter of my production are done by women. So that at the end of the day, I always walk to the market in Eastlands, and it's also in Uptown. And I make sure as they do them, I preach the sustainable gospel to them, so that also the momentums keep going. They not only work and make people look good, but they also keep in mind the sustainable aspect.
I think that's really great. You working with young girls and also ensuring that everyone knows about the sustainable development goals, which I think is all interconnected, and it's extremely important. Is there anything else you would like to add for the audience who's listening now?
It's just, this is a beautiful world. we should all live in harmony, minding, loving each other, and also making sure we take good care of the environment, because this is the only earth we have.
Absolutely agree with you, Larry. Thank you so much, and wish you a great journey ahead. And I will be following you. And I would love to definitely come by and take a look at your clothes and buy a jacket for myself.
You're welcome anytime, Bruna. I'll appreciate.
Okay, thank you, Larry. Bye.
You're welcome.
I did indeed learn a lot, and I hope you did too. The ocean has long been an ally in addressing climate change and has taken the brunt of the impact of human-made global warming. This is indeed an urgent need to reduce greenhouse gas emissions to limit the scale of climate change impact on the oceans and the cryosphere. With regards to the ocean decade, the youth must dish out the dish that is being served to them and also take an important place at the table. An enabling environment is being created, and the decade is one of them. And it is intergenerational dialogue, which is a must. We need to see the interconnectedness between the SDGs and the ocean decade, and realizing they're all pieces of the puzzle, and only together they can make up the entire picture. We spoke about the importance of women empowerment in all fields, especially in fashion, and how individuals contributing towards their well-being. It goes a long way to show that we can extend ourselves beyond what we do professionally, but also make it a priority to help those in need. The fact that every piece of clothing that you own has had water that has gone into its making. So by being a sustainable warrior, you can do your bit and take care of the planet. The fact that we can actually harvest our oceans definitely goes a long way when it comes to combating land use for fashion and the pesticides that seep into our waters. Last but not the least, I believe fashion is moving into regenerative textiles. So by harvesting the fabric of our oceans, we are going to move into a new realm, which is going to be beneficial to us and the planet. So I would like to end by showing you a small little video as to how cyanobacteria, which is the fabric of our oceans, have been harvested to make a yarn. And I hope to see you for the next session that speaks of a healthy and productive ocean.